When the anesthesia wore off and I saw that empty chair beside my hospital bed, my son's words from our last phone call echoed in my mind. Mom, you can reschedule cancer, but this master's qualifier only happens once a year. These words hit me like a physical blow, sharper than any surgeon's scalpel. The next day he came to me with an urgent request, as if nothing had happened. It was my chance to show him exactly what his priorities had cost him, and I took that chance. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. My hands trembled as I reached for my cell phone at 2:15 p.m., still groggy from the pain medication. The hospital bracelet around my wrist felt heavier than it should. Eleanor Whitman, age 75, post-surgery. My reading glasses sat on the bedside table, right next to the get well card from my neighbor that had arrived before my own son bothered to call. The room felt hollow without the sound of family voices. I'd been awake for 3 hours now, watching nurses come and go, each one asking gently if anyone was coming to visit. 4 rings, then Mark's cheerful voice. Hey Mom. How'd it go? Son, it's over. I straightened against my pillows despite the surgical pain. The tumor's out. I made it through. Crowd noise echoed through the phone. The distant sound of golf carts and excited chatter filled the background. Someone was announcing scores over a loudspeaker. Mark cleared his throat. Mom, that's fantastic news. I knew you were strong enough. The casual tone in his voice made my blood run cold. Listen, I'm actually calling because I need to talk to you about something important when I get back. The words hit like ice water. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles white against the plastic. Your mother just had cancer surgery, Mark. Just today. My voice barely above a whisper. I know, and I'm so proud of you for getting through it, he said, but his voice was distracted. In the background, I heard him greeting someone. Hey Jim. Great round today. Then, back to me. Mom, you understand I couldn't miss this, right? This networking opportunity could change everything for my career. Your mother could have died on that table today. But you didn't, Mom. You're fine. Look, cancer surgery happens, but these connections only come around once. You raised me to chase my dreams, remember? The dial tone buzzed in my ear. I sat motionless for exactly 5 minutes, staring at the wilted flowers from the hospital gift shop that I'd bought for myself. The wall clock showed 2:28 p.m. My wedding ring, the one I'd worn for 42 years before becoming a widow, caught the afternoon light streaming through windows that overlooked a world where sons abandoned their mothers for games. I found the business card the lawyer had given me last month tucked in my purse. Estate planning services. My pen felt heavy as I reached for it, but my resolve was diamond hard. Tomorrow, when Mark finally graced me with his presence, he was going to discover that some opportunities truly do only come once in a lifetime. And he had just missed his. The next morning, I was discharged at 10:30 a.m. The ride home in the taxi felt longer than usual, every bump in the road sending sharp reminders through my healing incision. Mrs. Chen from next door had offered to pick me up, but I'd declined. I needed time to think, time to prepare for what was coming. My house looked smaller somehow when I walked through the front door. 43 years of memories packed into these walls, and most of them involved sacrificing something for Mark's future. The living room still had his high school golf trophies on the mantelpiece. His college diploma hung in the hallway, the one I'd worked 3 jobs to pay for. Even the kitchen table was the same one where I'd helped him with homework every night after his father died. I made myself a cup of tea with shaking hands, settling into my favorite armchair by the window. The phone rang at 11:15 a.m. Mom. Mark's voice was bright, almost cheerful. I'm driving back from the tournament now. Mind if I stop by? There's something we need to discuss. Of course, sweetheart. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. I'll be here. Great. Oh, and Mom. Congratulations on the surgery going well. I knew you'd pull through. You're tough as nails. I hung up without responding to that. Tough as nails. Yes, I supposed I was about to prove just how tough. While I waited, I pulled out the manila folder I'd been keeping in my bedroom dresser. Inside were documents that represented a lifetime of careful saving, smart investments, and the modest inheritance from my parents' farm. The number at the bottom of the latest statement would have surprised Mark if he'd ever bothered to ask about my finances. $738,000. Mark had always assumed I was scraping by on my librarian's pension. He'd never asked, and I'd never corrected him. Let him think his old mother was just getting by while he chased his golf dreams with country club memberships and expensive equipment. At 12:45 p.m., His BMW pulled into my driveway. Through the window, I watched him check his phone, run his fingers through his hair, and practice that charming smile he'd inherited from his father. The same smile that had gotten him out of trouble his whole life. The doorbell rang twice before I answered. There he stood, my 37-year-old son, holding a small bouquet of grocery store flowers and wearing a golf shirt that probably cost more than my monthly utility bill. "Mom." He leaned in for a quick hug, careful not to press against my surgical site. "You look great. Much better than I expected." "Expected? Thank you for the flowers, Mark. Come in." We sat in the living room, him on the couch, me in my chair. He fidgeted with his car keys, that nervous energy he'd always had when he wanted something. "So," he began, flashing that smile again, "I have some incredible news. The tournament went even better than I hoped." I set my teacup down carefully, the china clinking against the saucer. "Tell me about it." "Mom, I shot a 68 in the final round. My best score ever in competition." His eyes lit up the way they used to when he was 12 and showing me a good report card. "But that's not even the best part. I met Thomas Blackwood, you know, the real estate mogul. He owns those luxury golf resorts across the country." I nodded, though the name meant nothing to me. Mark leaned forward, his excitement building. "He was so impressed with my game, Mom. We played 18 holes together yesterday, and he said I have natural talent and the right connections." Those were his exact words. Mark's hands moved as he spoke, gesturing like his father used to during his sales pitches. He's looking for partners in a new golf resort development. High-end, exclusive memberships, celebrity endorsements, the works. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart." I kept my voice steady, neutral. Inside, I could feel the pieces clicking together like a puzzle I'd been solving my whole life. "It is wonderful. This is exactly the break I've been working toward my entire career." He paused, that nervous energy returning. "The thing is, he needs partners who can contribute capital. Not just small amounts, serious investment money that shows commitment." "Here it comes. How much money, Mark?" "Well," he shifted on the couch, that practiced charm faltering just slightly. "He's looking for a minimum investment of $250,000. I know that sounds like a lot, but Mom, this is a guaranteed return. Blackwood's developments never fail. In 5 years, that investment could be worth $1 million or more." I took a slow sip of my tea, watching him over the rim of the cup. $250,000. I know it's your inheritance money, and I wouldn't ask if this wasn't a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But think about it. This could set us both up for life. When it pays off, I'll be able to take care of you properly. Maybe get you a nice little condo near one of the resort communities. Take care of me properly. The irony was almost amusing. And when would Mr. Blackwood need this investment? That's the thing, he's moving fast. He wants commitments by the end of this week. I know it's sudden, but the best opportunities always are, right? I set my teacup down and looked at my son, really looked at him. The expensive haircut, the designer golf shirt, the Rolex I'd given him for his 30th birthday gleaming on his wrist. The same boy who used to promise me he'd always take care of me, now sitting in my living room asking for $250,000 24 hours after missing my cancer surgery. "Mark," I said quietly, "tell me something. When you were deciding whether to come to the hospital yesterday or stay at the tournament, what went through your mind?" His smile faltered. For a moment, he looked like the teenage boy who'd been caught sneaking out to parties. "Mom, I explained this yesterday. The timing was just impossible." "Humor me. Walk me through your thought process." Mark ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from childhood when he was trying to talk his way out of trouble. "Look, I knew you were in good hands. Dr. Martinez is supposed to be one of the best oncologists in the state, right? And the surgery was routine. They told us that. They told us it was routine, but cancer surgery is never routine, Mark. There are always risks. But you're fine." He gestured toward me as if my presence proved his point. "You came through it perfectly. And meanwhile, I had this incredible opportunity that I couldn't reschedule. You always taught me to seize opportunities when they come." The words hung in the air between us like smoke. I could feel something cold settling in my chest, replacing the last vestiges of motherly excuses I'd been making for him. "So you weighed the risks," I said slowly. "Your mother possibly dying on the operating table versus missing a golf tournament." "It wasn't just a golf tournament, Mom. It was networking, career building, my entire future." And you decided your future was more important than being there if I didn't wake up. Mark's face flushed red. That's not fair. You're making it sound heartless when it was just practical thinking. You raised me to be practical. Practical. I repeated the word like it was foreign on my tongue. Is that what you call it? Mom, why are we rehashing this? You're fine, I'm here now, and we have this amazing opportunity in front of us. He leaned forward again, trying to recapture his earlier enthusiasm. Let's focus on the future instead of dwelling on the past. I stood up slowly, my surgical sight protesting with a sharp pull of pain. Mark started to rise too, but I held up my hand. Sit down, Mark. I need to get something. I walked to the kitchen, my bare feet silent on the linoleum floor. The manila folder sat on the counter where I'd left it. Inside, along with the financial statements, was the business card from Harrison and Associates, estate planning. I'd called them this morning from my hospital bed, right after Mark's cheerful phone call. When I returned to the living room, Mark was checking his phone, probably texting someone about his big investment opportunity. I have something to tell you, I said, settling back into my chair with the folder in my lap. Mark looked up from his phone, sliding it into his pocket. What's that, Mom? I opened the folder and pulled out the top document, a crisp legal paper with the letterhead of Harrison and Associates. Yesterday morning, while I was being prepped for surgery, I had a lot of time to think. About my life, about what really matters, about what kind of legacy I want to leave. That's sweet, Mom, but I'm not finished. My voice carried a firmness that made him stop mid-sentence. I thought about all the sacrifices I made for you. Working 3 jobs after your father died. Selling my mother's jewelry to pay for your golf lessons. Taking out a second mortgage to cover your college expenses. Mark shifted uncomfortably. And I've always appreciated that. Have you? I held up the document. Because lying in that hospital bed, waiting to see if I'd survive cancer surgery, I realized something. You've never once asked about my finances. Never wondered how a librarian managed to send you to private school and pay for all those tournament fees. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. I just assumed. I mean, you always managed somehow. I managed because I invested wisely. Because I lived below my means for 40 years. Because every dollar I didn't spend on myself went into building something for the future. I paused, letting that sink in. My estate is worth considerably more than you think, Mark. His eyes sharpened with interest, and I saw the exact moment when dollar signs replaced any concern for my well-being. How much more? $738,000. Mark's mouth fell open. He blinked several times, processing the number. 700. Mom, that's incredible. You're practically wealthy. I said quietly. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Mark's smile faltered. What do you mean, was? I held up the legal document. This morning, from my hospital bed, I called my lawyer. I made some changes to my will. Mark's face went pale. What kind of changes? I smoothed the document on my lap, taking my time. Let him sweat. Let him feel a fraction of the anxiety I'd felt lying alone in that hospital room. Well, originally, everything was set to go directly to you upon my death. The house, the investments, the savings accounts, all of it. I looked up at him, watching his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed hard. But yesterday gave me a new perspective on what you truly value. Mom, whatever you're thinking. I'm thinking very clearly for the first time in years, Mark. I pulled out the second document. Every penny of my estate is now going into the Eleanor Patricia Whitman Foundation for Cancer Research. The color drained completely from his face. You're giving it all away. Every last cent. I set the papers aside and folded my hands in my lap. Well, almost every cent. I did leave you something. Hope flickered in his eyes like a dying candle. What? Your golf trophies. And a letter explaining why. Mark shot to his feet, his hands clenched into fists. You can't be serious. Mom, you can't just throw away my entire inheritance because you're upset about one tournament. One tournament. I remained seated, my voice deadly calm. Mark, this wasn't about one tournament. This was about a choice. When faced with the possibility of losing your mother forever, you chose a game. It wasn't just a game. It was my career, my future. And now you get to live with that choice. I stood up slowly, the surgical pain sharp but manageable. You said it yourself yesterday, I can't reschedule cancer, but your tournament only happens once a year. Well, sons only get one mother, Mark. And you decided she wasn't worth 1 day of your time. His composure finally cracked. This is insane. You're punishing me for making a smart business decision. Business decision. I nodded slowly. Yes, I suppose that's exactly what it was. You calculated the odds and decided the risk of losing me was acceptable compared to missing your networking opportunity. Mark began pacing, his expensive shoes clicking against my hardwood floor. Okay, fine. Maybe I made the wrong call. Maybe I should have been there. But you're alive, Mom. You're fine. Doesn't that count for something? What counts, Mark, is that you weren't there because you didn't think you needed to be. Not because of an emergency, not because of a crisis, because you had something more important to do. He stopped pacing and spun to face me, his face flushed with anger and desperation. So what? You're going to destroy my future over this. Mom, I need that money. This investment with Blackwood, it's my chance to finally make something of myself. Make something of yourself. I almost laughed, but there was no humor left in me. Mark, you're 37 years old. If you haven't made something of yourself by now, $250,000 isn't going to change that. That's not fair. You know how competitive the golf industry is. This is my break. Your break. I walked to the mantelpiece and picked up his high school state championship trophy. The brass was tarnished now, but I remembered how proud I'd been that day, standing in the rain to watch him win. Tell me, when you got this trophy, what did you say to me? Mark's anger faltered, confusion replacing it. I don't remember. You said, Mom, this is just the beginning. Someday I'm going to take care of you the way you've taken care of me. I set the trophy down gently. You were 17. I believed you meant it. I did mean it. I do mean it. That's why this investment is so important. No, Mark. I turned back to him. You meant it when it was convenient to mean it. When you needed my support, my money, my sacrifices. But when I needed you, really needed you, you had better things to do. He ran both hands through his hair, that little boy gesture that used to melt my heart. Mom, please. You're making a mistake. I can change. I can be better. Can you? I walked back to my chair but remained standing. Yesterday, when you called me from that tournament, do you remember what you said? I said I was proud of you for getting through the surgery. After that, when I told you I could have died on that table. Mark's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I could see him trying to remember, trying to find words that might save him. You said, but you didn't, Mom. You're fine. Like my survival was a foregone conclusion. Like the possibility of losing me was never even real to you. Mark sank back onto the couch, his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed, but I couldn't tell if it was from genuine remorse or panic about losing his inheritance. I didn't mean it like that, he whispered. I was just relieved. I was scared too, Mom. I just didn't know how to show it. Scared enough to cut your tournament short and rush to my bedside. Silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside, I could hear Mrs. Chen watering her garden, the normal sounds of a world that kept spinning regardless of betrayal and broken promises. I thought there would be time, he finally admitted. I thought you'd always be there. That's the problem, Mark. You've always thought I'd be there. When you needed tuition money. When you needed emotional support after your divorce. When you needed someone to co-sign your car loan. I picked up the legal documents again. But the moment I needed you, really needed you, you weren't there. He stood up abruptly, that familiar flash of anger returning. So this is it. You're going to punish me for the rest of my life because of one bad decision. This isn't punishment, Mark. This is consequence. I met his gaze steadily. You made a choice yesterday that showed me exactly where I rank in your priorities. I'm simply responding in kind. But the Cancer Research Foundation, that money could help me help other people. I could use the investment returns to donate to charity, too. Stop. My voice cut through his desperate scrambling. Don't you dare try to make this about helping others. This is about Thomas Blackwood's golf resort and your networking opportunities and your precious career. Don't insult us both by pretending otherwise. Mark's shoulders sagged in defeat. For a moment, he looked like the lost little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. But that boy had grown into a man who abandoned his mother on her deathbed for a golf game. What do I have to do? He asked quietly. What do I have to do to make this right? I looked at him for a long moment, this stranger wearing my son's face. Nothing, I said finally. There's nothing you can do to make this right, Mark. The moment to make it right was yesterday at 7:30 in the morning when they wheeled me into surgery. That moment is gone. The words hung in the air like a final verdict. Mark stared at me as if seeing a stranger, his face cycling through disbelief, anger, and something that might have been grief. "You're really going to do this," he said. It wasn't a question. "I've already done it. The papers were signed this morning." He stood up slowly, his movements mechanical, like a man in shock. "So that's it then. 37 years, and it all comes down to one day." "No, Mark." I remained in my chair, suddenly feeling every one of my 75 years. "It comes down to a lifetime of patterns. Yesterday was just the day I finally saw them clearly." He walked to the mantelpiece, his fingers trailing along the edge of his old trophies. "You know what's funny? I actually called you from the golf course yesterday morning, before my tea time. I felt a flicker of something, hope, curiosity, but kept my voice steady. You didn't mention that. I was going to tell you I'd changed my mind, that I was going to forfeit and drive straight to the hospital." He picked up his state championship trophy, the one I'd been holding earlier. But then Blackwood walked up. He slapped me on the back and said, "Ready to show me what you're made of, son?" My heart clenched despite everything. And I hung up without saying anything. I told myself you'd understand, that you'd be proud of me for seizing the opportunity. He set the trophy down with a heavy thud. I convinced myself that missing one day wouldn't matter because there would be other days. "But you didn't know that for certain." "No." His voice was barely a whisper. "I gambled with your life, and I lost." For the first time since he'd arrived, I heard genuine remorse in his voice. Not panic about the money, not anger at the consequences, actual understanding of what he'd done. "Yes," I said quietly. "You did." Mark walked toward the front door, then stopped with his hand on the knob. "The golf trophies you're leaving me, is that supposed to be ironic?" I considered the question, looking at the row of gleaming metal and plastic that had once represented so much hope and pride. "No, Mark. They are a reminder." "Of what?" "Of the boy who used to thank me after every tournament, who used to say that none of his victories meant anything without me there to see them." I stood up, my surgical sight protesting with a sharp pull. "I want you to remember that boy existed. And I want you to remember what happened to him." Mark's hand trembled on the doorknob. "I loved you, Mom. I still love you. I know you do." My voice was steady, but something inside me was breaking apart. "But love isn't just a feeling, Mark. It's a choice. And when it mattered most, you chose something else." He turned the knob, then paused one more time. Will you ever forgive me?" The question hung between us like a bridge I wasn't sure I could cross. Outside, a car drove by, its radio playing something cheerful and distant. Life continuing on while mine shifted irrevocably. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But forgiveness won't change what I've done. The papers are signed, Mark. The decision is final." He nodded, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Goodbye, Mom." "Goodbye, sweetheart." The door closed with a soft click, and I was alone in my living room with the afternoon sunlight streaming through windows he'd helped me wash last spring. I could hear his BMW starting in the driveway, the engine growing fainter as he drove away. I walked to the kitchen and made myself another cup of tea, my hands steadier than they'd been all day. The house felt different somehow, not empty, but cleansed. Like a fever finally breaking after a long illness. On the counter sat the business card for Harrison and Associates, and beside it, a small notepad where I'd written down the phone number for the local cancer support group. Tomorrow, I would call them. Not as someone's mother or someone's caretaker, but as Eleanor, a 75-year-old cancer survivor who had finally learned the difference between being needed and being valued. I carried my tea to the living room and settled into my chair by the window. The afternoon light was softer now, golden and warm against my face. Mrs. Chen waved from her garden next door, and I waved back. Such a simple gesture, but it felt different somehow. Lighter. The manila folder still lay open on the coffee table, legal documents scattered like fallen leaves. I gathered them up slowly, thinking about the phone call I'd made from my hospital bed this morning. Mr. Harrison had been surprised by my urgency, but he'd accommodated my request to expedite the paperwork. "Are you certain about this decision, Mrs. Whitman?" he'd asked. "It's quite a substantial change." "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," I'd told him. And I hadn't been lying. Sitting there in that sterile hospital room, surrounded by machines that cared for me more tenderly than my own son, I'd felt a clarity I hadn't experienced in decades. The fog of maternal obligation and endless forgiveness had finally lifted. My phone buzzed on the side table. A text message from Mark. Mom, I know you're angry, but please reconsider. We can work this out. I read it twice, then deleted it without responding. Some bridges, once burned, aren't meant to be rebuilt. I thought about the Eleanor Patricia Whitman Foundation for Cancer Research that would soon bear my name. Real researchers would use that money to help people like me, people who deserved better than empty chairs beside hospital beds. The irony wasn't lost on me that Mark's absence had led to something that might prevent other families from experiencing what we had. The sun was beginning to set, painting my living room in shades of amber and gold. I'd lived in this house for 43 years, raised a son within these walls, mourned a husband, battled cancer. But tonight, for the first time in years, it felt like home again, not just a place where I waited for other people to need me. I picked up my teacup and took a slow sip, savoring the warmth. Tomorrow, I would call the cancer support group. I would schedule my follow-up appointments. I would start living for Eleanor instead of living for everyone else. Mark had been right about one thing: life moves on. He'd just been wrong about whose life mattered most. I leaned back in my chair and watched the sun disappear behind the neighbors' rooftops. Somewhere across town, my son was probably making calls, trying to salvage his investment opportunity, learning what it felt like when the people you counted on weren't there when you needed them most. The thought should have brought me sadness. Instead, it brought me peace. He'd thought the game was his victory. But life, real life, was where you earned your score. And for the first time in 7 to 5 years, I was finally playing by my own rules. If you like this story, please subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.